Good evening. Welcome to Larry Rinker Golf Live. Hope you're having a great week. My guest today, 3D expert, biomechanist, Dr. Sasho Mackenzie. And Sasho, always great to have you on the show. Always great. I've got a new ebook out, The Journeyman, and you can pick that up at larryrinker.com. And there is Sasho Mackenzie, my guest tonight, and you can follow him on Twitter at Sasho Mackenzie. So Sasho, a lot has been said recently about Bryson Dechambeau, and he's getting over 140 miles per hour club head speed. He's getting ball speeds over 200 miles per hour. And we'll just show some swings that are before he gained the weight here. For a guy that doesn't have a lot of wrist cock and, comes into the ball, this is before he gained 30 pounds. But talk a little bit about his swing and what makes him so explosive.
Yeah, well, I think, the 20 miles per hour of ball speed that he's gained comes from a few different areas that he's worked on. Personally, I think that the additional mass is at the bottom of the list. I see massive changes in his swing mechanics as being the primary source. If we were going to take that 20 miles per hour, I think he was at about 175. And if we say he's, at 195 now, it certainly seems to be some ball speeds he puts in play. Then, I might guess that maybe 14 miles per hour is due to swing mechanical changes. His really aggressive backswing. He's got some amazing stretches going on in transition. The most dramatic of which is that dynamic wrist cock. His lower body's long gone and he's still adding, some radial deviation in those wrists. I think that the weight training he's done has probably added a few miles per hour. I think that the mass he's added is probably inconsequentially, probably could have added only maybe 10 or 15 pounds and still had the benefit of that improved muscle quality.
So talk about this transition here.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think this is something that, right in here, when he starts down, this is something I think that he and Chris Como, your friend, kind of changed. They really wanted to, and I think a lot of really good players do this, but the hands are going to lower and the right hand and wrist is going to go more into extension, right?
Yep. So the kind of more, the newer swing is on the right, correct, Larry? Or are we looking
Yeah,
at...
I think it is. Yeah. But look how on plane he is now. And I think, he probably felt like he shallowed it a little more right in here, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I think he used to be the most planar looking, and that was his objective, planar looking swing around to the extreme. I think he's kind of realized that maybe that's not going to be super helpful with control, and it's probably going to hurt speed a little bit for sure. So he's certainly more dynamic, and he's not worried about putting the center mass of the club in different positions in the downswing. He's not trying to constrain it to this visible plane throughout the swing.
One thing I think that's interesting is, and I'm going to bring this up, but how much faster his golf swing is now. So when you watch this video here, look how much faster that club gets to the ball.
Yeah, it's controlled looking on the left and maximum effort on the right. I talk a lot about the benefits of a faster backswing, especially with a talented athlete. So if you get your body moving faster in the backswing, that means that those muscles that are, crossing from the pelvis across the upper body, the obliques, as one example, they have to fire a lot harder to stop that motion. And that means that they're going to be firing at a really high level to start the downswing. And the more force we can get out of those muscles during the downswing, the more energy we can add to the swing. And he also does a really good job of getting that energy out to the club. And so not only is he getting more force in the muscles across from the pelvis to the upper body, but also the muscles across the shoulders and the muscles across the wrist. And some people, it affects their transition. So you can see maybe a lesser skilled athlete, if they do have a decent, lower body, upper body, then proximal to distal movement, and you get them to swing faster in the backswing, they might lose that transition sequence. But Bryson's improved it. He's got massive stretches across all those joints in the downswing. His lower body's long gone, and that club is staying parallel to the ground with the driver.
Well, what I find interesting is in the old days, they used to say, take it back nice and slow so you can create a lot of speed. And I remember the first time I heard it was James Light said, if you want more speed, you got to make that backswing faster. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. Yeah,
it's a common principle through a lot of sports. If you took an average person and you said, all right, I want you to do a squat jump where you squatted down, paused, and then jumped as high as you could, they would jump higher if they squatted and jumped in one motion, doing counter movement jump. And if you then told them to jump off a box and immediately land and jump as high as they could, they probably wouldn't jump as high. But if you look at elite athletes, if you look at Olympic weightlifters, for example, the higher you can get really high boxes that they jump off of, and they continue to increase their vertical jump because they're able to generate these really high forces, and they're still able to stay coordinated enough to execute that jumping movement. So some people maximize their vertical jumping off a 3-foot box. And that's what we see with Bryson. So the average person might mess up their transition sequence. They might not be able to handle the speed, but
right.
Bryson certainly can. And just because you're not a great golfer doesn't mean you don't have those athletic gifts to take advantage of it, right? Maybe that might be what moves you into the great golfer category.
Well, I remember Payne Stewart had a bag tag that said tempo on one side and rhythm on the other. And, that beautiful swing he had. And, we watch Ernie Els, who looks like he's got this smooth swing, but creates all this speed and power and distance. But, this whole idea that, hey, if you want the club going faster at impact, you got to have the whole swing faster. And so this idea of slow backswing and trying to keep transition slow, like you say, a better athlete can control a faster change of direction than someone that doesn't have quite the hand-eye.
Yes, exactly. It used to take me, a lot to convince people that just because you see someone who you perceive as a fast swinger, like an Ernie Els, a John Rahm, everybody would say, wow, Ernie Els back in the day, they would say, wow, these guys have really fast club head speeds. A Tony Finau swinging at 120. And I would say, yeah, but they're not really maximizing the principles that could increase club head speed. Maybe they could swing faster. It's a lot easier now because there's Bryson Dechambeau that I can point to.
Right.
Bryson Dechambeau a year ago swinging with a ball speed of 175, and now he's up over 200. Tony Finau is another great example. I would say, look, if you lengthen your hand path, you make a longer swing, you have more potential to do work on the club and get club head speed. And somebody would say, well, no, look at Tony Finau. He's got a crazy short backswing. He's 121. He's one of the fastest guys out there. Yeah, but watch what happens when he increases the length of his backswing. He's had swings recently that he's shown on social media with his foresight where he's up in the high 130s with club head speed over 200.
Really?
Ball speed.
Really?
Yeah. So the potential's there. So yeah, Jamie Sadlowski or Kyle Berkshire can have silky smooth tempo and swing at 135.
Right.
But if you want to get to 150, you know, what these guys do, you know, then you don't have that smoothness. Now, by the same token, I would say that probably you're more likely to pull off a shot you're trying to hit with a little bit, you know, more graceful tempo, like a Payne Stewart or Ernie Els or Fred Couples. When you put yourself right in the edge like Bryson's doing, it makes it harder to execute the exact shot you want to hit, if it's a draw or a fade or high or low, which makes it even more impressive that he's able to do it, right? If you watch,
it really is. I mean, when Cam Champ came along, they said he was the fastest guy on tour, longest guy on tour, and he was getting close to 130 mile per hour club head speed.
Mm-hmm.
You think of Tim Burke and Kyle Berkshire, like you're saying, they're up over 150. Jamie Sadlowski, you know, when they really are ripping it.
Yeah.
And Tim Burke's a member at the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club in Orlando where I teach. And, you know, he's out practicing and trying to get 144, 145, 146. So you think, okay, the fastest guy on tour is under 130, and these bombers are, you know, over 150 in competition with that 47 and 3/4 inch driver.
Yeah.
But for Bryson to be getting up over 140 miles per hour and over 200 ball speed, it's just kind of crazy to think somebody's playing the tour with that kind of speed.
And hitting shots with very low amount of curve. You
Right.
know, he seems very on the tee. He seems as close to maximum effort as some of these long drive guys are. Yet when you watch the long drive competition, one's a massive duck hook. The next one's a block slice.
Right.
You know, right. And you have this massive grid defined. I mean, he's for his current potential, he's almost as close in terms of effort level, but he's got these balls on a frozen rope. It is very, very impressive. You know, I think his percent fairways hit, which isn't a great stat, but it provides some indication, is about the same, maybe a little bit better, which tells me that when you're 50 yards further down the fairway, your deviation that you're launching these balls at is much tighter. If you're going to maintain
totally
that level of accuracy. And the other,
you have a lady with 70 mile per hour club head speed, probably not missing many fairways.
yeah, you can spray it a lot, and you have a much bigger because of the short distance, that angle that you're going to stay within the fairway.
So how is Bryson able to create so much speed with so little wrist cock at the top?
Well, I think if you pull up one of his driver swings, it's not about finishing with the wrist cock. I like to see when you get to the top of the backswing, I don't want all your ranges of motion at your joints maxed out.
Okay.
Right? I would like to be able to see that lower body, the hips, you know, start turning towards the target, stretching those muscles that go across to the upper body without pulling the upper body along immediately. So you get that stretch, you get that buildup of force, then the upper body starts to get pulled along, and you see him, you know, turn into that lead arm, right? So, you know, the angle, but with that lead shoulder might even get a little bit more acute. So you get a big stretch in his lats, which he says, you know, important. And then the last stretch would be the one at that wrist club connection, you know, so you get these sequential stretches, which is really how you're going to maximize your potential. So if he could swing at 175 with a pause at the top, keep that wrist cock fixed, like, you know, you used to see him do, you know, he would kind of maintain that width through the whole downswing, but he's not tapping into that extra potential.
Right. He called that his fairway finder swing, right?
Yeah. Now his fairway finder's at 135 miles per hour.
Yeah, which is just crazy because I know he's getting over 140 in practice. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's just, and Brian Ziegler was saying, you know, it's on gears too, so you know, it's pretty darn accurate what he's getting. You know, working with Chris Como and getting these club head speeds over 140 and ball speeds over 200. I mean, who would have thought somebody playing the tour, like you're saying, with the tight variance, how straight he hits it, to have that kind of club head speed still hit it straight.
Yeah. And while he's very impressive and what he's done is amazing to me, to me, it's equivalent to the first guy that decided to do, even though it's not a new technique in golf, there are people who might swing like him. It is a new approach. We're like, let's maximize our effort. It's okay to see how much we can let it out.
Right.
In that sense, it's equivalent to the first guy that decided to do rotational shot put technique, right?
Okay.
They're like, oh, you're never going to find the sector. Yeah, but it's worth it. The first, Dick Fosbury, when he did the Fosbury flop.
Right.
The guy that did a jump spin serve in volleyball. Someone said, well, you're never going to, yeah, look, this is an amazing serve, but you're never going to be able to do it repeatedly. And now you can't find a volleyball team worth their salt that doesn't have at least 3 jump spin servers. If you go to the Olympics and shot put, everybody's using the rotational technique. Everybody's doing the Fosbury flop. So I think Bryson has shown that look, yeah, if you've got a technique with, kind of a controlled swing and 150 mile per hour club speed with your driver, it's probably worth exploring to see if you can get up to 125. I think you're going to see guys like Tony Finau, all of a sudden start to open things up a little bit. And also the strokes gained off the tee statistic in this can't be underestimated. If someone had a kid come along, and it's also helpful that Bryson's winning, but we could think of this scenario where Bryson's maybe iron game or short game or putting was just okay. We wouldn't be able to really see how much he's gaining 30 years ago without the strokes gained off the tee statistic, how much he's actually gaining. So we can quantifiably say, look, he's the best off the tee. He's gaining more strokes on the field than anybody else off the tee because of the way he's playing. It would have been easy to dismiss and say, yeah, he's hitting it far, but he's not winning. And, he maybe even missed a cut. But there's enough factors there that I just don't see how other players aren't going to try to, also chase this,
Well, I heard there was a drive on Sunday at the PGA where Bryson outdrove Tony Finau by 50 yards.
Yeah.
And that was one where Finau was like, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah. And you start to see if we're a guy like Finau, who maybe is seeing marginal gains in other areas of his performance with practice, okay, how much better can my putting get, personally with my own practice? How much better can my approach game get, my strategy? But he goes, I've got 10 miles per hour club head speed sitting in the bag that I can pull out. Maybe it's worth spending a couple hours a day to see if you can't rein that in. Arguably, if you have that in the bag and you're not number one in strokes gained off the tee, maybe you say, it's time to pull it out.
Well, I think it's interesting, this whole idea of chasing more distance. I could name some names of tour players back in my day that chased distance, and they totally messed up their swing. And not only did they not get the distance, but they really ruined what they had.
Yeah.
And they went from being top 30 players to not even in the top 125. So Jordan Spieth chased distance and was 197th last season in driving, strokes gained driving. So, you got to go about it the right way. And that's what I love about right balance, whether you're upper, mid, or low core. You got to kind of figure out what works for you. So you're still going to be able to hit fairways and hit straight. And it seems like Chris Como and Bryson have kind of figured out what that is for him. And they've got a magic formula there that's working. But as well as I do, there's other guys that have chased it that have not been successful. Probably
the majority. There are very few. If you look, since 2007, there are a few players who have steadily increased their ball speed, and they might be surprising. Guys like Adam Scott has shown a steady increase in ball speed over the last 12 years. Justin Rose, another guy who's added 8 miles per hour of ball speed over the last number of years. Hideki Matsuyama, but there's not many.
Right.
You look at guys like Gary Woodland, Bubba Watson, Dustin Johnson. They've kind of been flat at 180, and I think that they probably thought, hey, this is far enough,
Right.
But all of a sudden you get a Cameron Champ that kind of, you go, oh, is that guy a one-off? And then you see Bryson leapfrogging. And, I think, golf science has progressed quite a bit as well. Not just in understanding the mechanics, how can we use the ground to get more angular momentum in our system? How can we use our bodies to get more energy out to the club? but also training's improved, so I think there will be a lot of people that will work out not the best way in the gym. They'll pack on muscle. I remember 20 years ago hearing stories about Fred Funk, who's like, went to the gym, got bigger, and didn't put a yard of distance on,
Right.
golf course. But Bryson's obviously, I think the bulking up is kind of a red herring. I think he could have looked lean and ripped and still done it, but I could be wrong. And it's also nice to have those extra calories for recovery. If he's training as hard as he did, it's nice to have those extra calories around and make sure that your muscles are always going to be able to repair themselves.
Well, I think he's definitely stronger. And I heard that he, what he's lifting and the things, his trunk rotation and stuff that he's doing is like so much more than he had before.
Yeah. Yep. And I think a big part of it too is swinging, like doing overspeed and underspeed training where you're swinging light objects as fast as you can. And even outside of that, just in training, swinging as fast as you possibly can. During the quarantine days when he was posting on Instagram, you could see that he was just absolutely taking crazy cuts of golf balls over and over again in his backyard. I'm not sure many golfers did that. I know Phil Mickelson had, he showed a steady decrease in ball speed, almost 8 miles per hour up until 2018. He was down near 170 ball speed, which was a big drop from, when he was playing his best on tour. And then in one season, jumped back up to almost 180.
Right.
So and then that's a Phil who's in his late 40s with kids and a lot going on.
50 now. He's eligible for the Champions Tour.
That's right. Now he's actually 50. So, what Phil did was super impressive, maybe not as impressive as Bryson, but at the same time, was Phil quite as committed as Bryson? Did he do everything that Bryson did? Maybe Phil was already closer to his maximum. But I think it's a really exciting time for watching tour players and seeing how they're going to respond to really this kind of phenomenon.
Well, with most of my students, I really feel if I could get 3 or 4 miles per hour faster club head speed, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I've had a couple that I've been able to get 8, 9 miles per hour faster. That's pretty amazing. But Bryson has gone from 125-ish to over 140. And I heard he was getting 144 in practice, maybe even a little faster. To gain 19, almost 20 miles per hour club head speed, and to do it from 120, let's just say 124 to 144, that almost seems next to impossible.
Yeah. Big part of it's training. Bigger part of it's probably is changing mechanics. And what we don't know is what his potential was before he started,
Right.
So PGA Tour golf isn't long driving. If he was a 100-meter sprinter, you would never see that leap. But it would be interesting to have the data point of 2019 Bryson swinging as hard as he could.
Right.
Could he get up to, maybe he could have gotten up to 131 balls, club head speed. Now he's added a bunch more, right? That's the that intent and how much you're willing to actually bring to the course is a big part of it too. Still impressive.
But you think that, okay, 2.5 yards per mile per hour club head speed, if he picked up 20 miles per hour, he's hitting it 50 yards further. I mean, to think that somebody could hit it 50 yards further is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, well, yeah, that to me, that's the biggest leap, is that he brought it to the course.
And I can't think of any player going back to even the 50s and 60s that in their prime picked up 50 yards in distance.
No, not even, no, there's no chance.
Talk about what do you think, let's just say our average male golfer that has 90 miles per hour club head speed.
Yeah.
You talked about swinging a lighter thing like the super speed sticks.
Yep.
The whole idea of swinging a donut baseball bat, that's been debunked a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has in baseball. For the last 3 years, I've been doing overspeed, underspeed training in my lab. So almost 8 hours a day. We've got golfers coming in. We monitor every session. And we've kind of got a pretty good formula now for how much weight you should be swinging relative to your driver. The way I set up the training, the numbers that have come out is to target a certain percentage of your current club head speed. So if you right now, if you were swinging 100 miles an hour with your own driver, and we were doing a protocol that we were using lighter weights, I would try to find the weight that would have you swinging at about 110 to 112 miles per hour.
Okay.
And this theory comes from track and field and sports where there's a lot more research, where you don't want to mess up your mechanics too much. If you go super light, then all of a sudden now the movement isn't exactly like your golf swing. It's too far removed from your golf swing.
Right.
And also there's numerous benefits from swinging an implement that doesn't have a face. I think that if you were talking about that average golfer that comes in swinging 90, we're so concerned about the direction the ball goes that we kind of tie ourselves in knots over time.
Right.
Right. We find a way to add a little bit more tension to kind of hang on to steer. And we've lost that natural movement that we might have had to actually get a lot of speed. So we don't start from a place of speed and then try to find the face. We just gradually get into this, bad position. And
you're right. I have students that the first, they hit balls, and the first thing, my knee-jerk reaction is, that's not fast enough.
Yeah.
And I have them make a swing. Let me see some speed.
Yeah.
And it might be a 7-iron. And then the next one, I say, go faster. And I go, third one, out of control. And they step up, and I go, now just move to the ball and make that swing. And if they catch it solid, their eyes get this big because they just hit it 10, 15 yards further than they were hitting that 7-iron.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that, hey, you can go faster.
Yeah. So with a kind of an 18-week session, they take about 20 minutes, 18 session program, takes about 6 weeks. We're averaging about 8 miles per hour gain in golfers.
Wow.
Between 25 and 65 years of age. And it comes from a couple of sources. There's the training of the body. So, like actually getting the neuromuscular system fired up.
Right.
I also see improved mechanics. So I usually have the flight scope going in swing speed mode, so they get feedback in every shot.
Right.
And I'll point out, hey, look, your path right now is, for right-handed golfers, are always like 10 left or something. These guys that hit big slices. And so not only am I cueing them to, hey, let's see if we can get the speed up, so swing harder, but also you can see them adjusting their mechanics because it's kind of trial and error. Well, that didn't work. I was kind of tighten over the top, and you'll see them all of a sudden find that in to out path. And all of a sudden that number moves less left, and all of a sudden it might be 2 or 3 out to the right as their speed goes up. So they start to kind of self-organize with that feedback. So you without the negative feedback of ball flight, right? Right. So, you could actually make a much faster swing on the driving range, hit it off the toe, and you're going, well, that was garbage. Whereas maybe all you had to do was step a half inch closer to the ball, and that would have been money.
Right.
So it kind of frees them up to kind of find the movements that will generate that high club head speed, and then gives them the confidence to practice a bit with it on the range.
Well, I've always believed that if the club head has speed, it's in a pretty good orbit.
Right. Yeah.
And if it's losing speed, it's off orbit. It's not where it needs to be to have speed.
Yeah, I like the analogy of pushing versus pulling the bellhop cart. If you're kind of hanging on and tight, it almost turns into you kind of pushing or steering the club, and chaos ensues. But if you kind of pull that bellhop cart, kind of let it go, then, you know, it's going to go pretty straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's giving people the reps with the feedback of seeing that speed, and also swinging the right weighted club, that can really open that up.
Well, Sasho, it has been great having you on the show. And if somebody wants to find out more about Sasho Mackenzie, you can follow him on Twitter at Sasho Mackenzie. You're doing research with a lot of companies, Ping and Titleist, Body Track. You know, you've done some stuff that you know, has really you know, made some incredible breakthroughs really in the game of golf. And you know, it's always great to have you on the show. And I just want to thank my sponsors that help us with that, and that would be Titleist, FootJoy, the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club in Orlando, and the Red Sky Golf Club in Vail, Colorado. But Sasho, always great to catch up with you. I just thank you for what you're doing in the world of golf, and what you're doing with the companies, what you're doing with the PGA professionals around the country. You know, because knowledge is power, and bottom line, we want to make the game more fun and have people shoot lower scores and hit it further,
Yeah.
which is going to help. And I appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you, Larry. It was a pleasure being on, as always.
All right, Sasho Mackenzie. Till next week, keep swinging.